Congress should not be voting on any so-called gun control legislation until after the 4th of July. Here's why. Hey folks, I'm Mark Smith, host of the Four Boxes Diner, proud American gun owner, constitutional attorney, and best-selling author. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, please do so. We're really trying to spread the word, so please subscribe, like, and share this video. I'm sure all of you have been paying attention to this so-called gun control legislation being talked about in Congress. In other videos, I explain why I think that any gun control is unconstitutional and improper, but let's step back for a second and just talk about the sort of the process here. We know that the House of Representatives, controlled by the Democrats, will pass any form of gun control law imaginable, including but not limited to probably confiscating guns if they could. But realistically, that would not get through the United States Senate. So right now, there are apparently 10 Republicans who support some sort of gun control legislation, which I firmly oppose, but they're at least approving of a framework, which is really just an agreement to agree on some types of gun control law, which includes, for example, subsidizing red flag laws, which is really subsidizing anti-civil rights laws, in my opinion. Regardless, I want to talk about the procedure here for a second. First of all, isn't it interesting enough the 10 Republicans that came out in support of the framework of gun control, four of them are retiring this year. Richard Burr of North Carolina, Pat Toomey of Pennsylvania, Rod Portman of Ohio, and Roy Blunt of Missouri, are all going to be retiring. Isn't it interesting that on their way out, when they don't have to face voters, they have somehow decided they're going to sign off on gun control legislation? But let's move past that pure political point, and let's talk about diagnosing problems. Now, we know that the U.S. Supreme Court is about ready any day now to issue a decision in Nysurper versus Bruin, which is going to talk about the scope of the Second Amendment and the legal standards associated with handling cases and addressing cases before the federal courts and the state courts involving whether or not there might be a violation of the Second Amendment, your right to keep and bear arms. If you are trying to be an honest broker here and get to some sort of solution that perhaps would help protect Americans while not violating the Constitution, including the right to keep and bear arms, don't you think you would want to wait to get all the available information necessary, including, for example, reading that U.S. Supreme Court case of Nysurper versus Bruin when it comes out in a couple weeks? Let's think about this in another context. If you were going to diagnose a person medically, and you knew there were x-rays, MRIs, CAT scans, blood tests that have been ordered and are on the way and are going to be made available to you in a matter of days, if just a few weeks, then wouldn't you want to wait and review the results of those diagnostic tests, the x-rays, the MRIs, and the like? Take a look at it, analyze it, consider it, and then make a decision, for example, whether or not to conduct surgery or how to treat the patient. Well, here as we sit here right now, we know we're on the eve of a major Supreme Court decision involving the Second Amendment. We also know that the United States Senate is supposedly trying to avoid violating the Second Amendment while engaging in some form of legislation to try to address the concerns over mass shootings in public schools. But again, I ask this: why don't you get all the critical information first? And by the way, we know that Congress is going home for their 4th of July hiatus or recess starting on June 24th, and they're not coming back until June 11th. That's about 2 weeks. So why are these senators trying to rush through gun control legislation before breaking for recess and going home to face their constituents? What are they scared about? Why has the United States Senate decided not to have hearings on the so-called gun control legislation? So it seems to me this is very stupid. Now, I'm not a political consultant. I don't talk to elected officials. I don't even personally know any elected officials, nor do I necessarily want to, by the way. But beyond that, here's the thought I have. We know from life and in other contexts, the trend is your friend. Right now, from a political point of view, a purely political point of view, the Republicans look like they're doing quite well and going to do quite well in the fall of 2022 in the midterm elections. The trend is their friend. So why on earth would any Republican decide this is a good idea to reach out and grab the third rail of gun control, which is just going to irritate the bulk of your base? Why would you even consider doing this? And if you are going to do this, well, then why don't you do it and vote and consider all these issues after the 4th of July recess, which is after you have the benefit of looking at what the Supreme Court has to say about the meaning of the Second Amendment, the scope of it, and the standard review of Second Amendment cases. Because why would you want to pass federal legislation that you may wake up and realize that it's going to violate the most recent Supreme Court case that you rushed out ahead of, when all you had to do is wait a couple weeks and read it, analyze it, and make sure that any legislation you passed was consistent with the Constitution as understood by the Second Amendment, as understood by the Supreme Court? And also, why wouldn't you want to go home, back to your home districts, your home states, and talk to constituents about what their real problems are, what their real considerations are, what their concerns are, involving firearms, the Second Amendment, crazy people, terrorists, open borders, and whether or not we want to give up any of our Second Amendment rights, given the fact that it doesn't appear as if government is able to protect us, given the fact we have an open border in the South, given the fact that it appears the Uvalde case, if you look at what's going on here, the early reports suggest that maybe there was some real government incompetence going on there that allowed for those, killings to take place. Only time will tell as the investigation moves forward. But the bottom line is this. It seems to me that Congress should not be rushing forward to do anything on the topic of guns without proper hearings, without taking their time, and without reviewing the Nyserpa versus Brewing case. If they do anything else that, in my opinion, is political malfeasance and malpractice all the way around, especially for Republicans who should be protecting our Second Amendment rights, because unlike many people on the other side of the aisle, most Republicans, I believe, really do believe that we have a Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms and that it should never be infringed, even slightly. Okay, I hope you learned something here today at the Four Boxes Diner. If you haven't subscribed, please do so, and we'll see you again soon at the Four Boxes Diner.
Orders up. Table 2A.